tonight is.
Oh, can't hear him.
John? No.
Still muted, John.
He's rolling too.
Do you want to text him, Chief?
I think he's got the comment.
Okay, he's figured it out, I think.
He's trying to.
No.
Nope.
Nope.
It's like he's not coming through our speaker so you can hear him.
All right, in the essence of time, John, can you hear us? Okay, so why don't I make a segue? The center has been around for 18 years, and it's had a very, very successful 18 years. As I always said, one of the proudest things, whether you use the center or you don't use the center, how many communities our size have one, have it looked as good as it did the day it was built, it's paid for, and recaptures a significant portion of its expenditures. We ought to be very proud of that. But rightly or wrongly, 18, 19 years ago, our plan was to essentially ask the taxpayers to build it, and the users would pay to operate it. At the time, there were two ballot initiatives, one to enact a tax, and a second one to enact the indebtedness to build Splash Zone and the center. And over the years, I want to say there's approximately 3 million people that have crossed through those doors. And there's a lot of success stories in people's health and recreation that go along with that. But as the time's gone on, we have some challenges. And those challenges exist because there's competition around us that hasn't been there before, whether it's Planet Fitness or Anytime Fitness. The university has one, perhaps two expansions of their facility, and it's been more and more difficult to recapture or to make all ends meet. One of the things that, frankly speaking, I get so tired of hearing is when a citizen says, well, we're subsidizing the rec center and the general fund is paying the rec center. Get over it, folks. Not one dime in 18 years has ever gone from City Hall to that rec center. The reality of it is the rec center and its users have been sending money to City Hall to the tune of about $70,000 a year. But the time is what it is, and we need a long-term solution. So the advisory board, along with John and myself, spent a considerable amount of time looking at each and every option that was available. Some were better than others, some were actually horrible. Shutting down the facility is a horrible option, but it is an option. We ended up finding a company that we could outsource the management to. And with that, not only achieve the financial stability and success that we have long envisioned, but they would introduce a concept also called medical integration that really also focuses on the community health. And that community health element is working in partnership with the medical providers that we have in our area. Rolla is the center of medical care. I mean, I want to say Phelps County handles at least 6 counties, give or take. It's important. And there's an emphasis today on the lifestyle diseases. Think of what our national health care bill would be if we focused on diabetes and obesity, sedentary lifestyle, smoking, and some of those basics that are really controlled by large part by us as individuals. So we found the firm, and we have gotten to the point where we have negotiated an agreement. Council will see that later in a closed session. The only reason the public is not seeing it yet is because there's still some negotiation going on with some of the final terms and conditions. But this is a change. It's a significant change from where we had been for 18 years. So we very much want to give the public a chance to digest that and offer comments if they so choose. And I think Andrew has done a very good job in the last couple of issues of the focus, describing more of the particulars associated with what we're trying to do. So with that said, is there any citizen that would like to speak to City Council?
I would, your mayor.
Come on up.
So I'm Francine Morangi, and I am the vice chair of the Center's advisory board. I'm also a center loyalist and a frequent user. I recognize the value of the center as a significant city asset and one that should be maintained and enhanced. So to that end, tonight, I want to express support for outsourcing the management of the center to a professional management company, and specifically outsourcing the management to Power Wellness. A professional fitness management company has expertise in critical areas of fitness operation that the city of Rolla does not have. A professional fitness management company is an expert in fitness management, so the city of Rolla doesn't have to be. A professional fitness management company knows fitness industry standards and best practices. And a professional fitness management company would give the center its best chance of becoming financially self-sustaining and the very best chance of meeting its stated mission to enhance our region's quality of life by promoting health and wellness for all ages and fitness levels. Power Wellness is the nation's largest management company in the medical fitness industry. It successfully operates more than 30 specialized fitness centers for municipalities like Rolla and healthcare systems, community foundations, and academic institutions. Power Wellness is extremely competent in managing fitness and wellness centers because that is its core business. It doesn't do anything else. Power Wellness has a successful track record of increasing membership and improving the financial position of its clients, as well as enhancing member customer service. Power Wellness has exceptional, deep resources that a fitness center requires. Power Wellness has developed a comprehensive strategy on how to effectively reopen fitness centers post-COVID-19, how to drive revenue and build trust among members and prospects looking for a safe, clean facility. Power Wellness, according to reference checks, is a great management partner, accommodating, responsive, professional, and has a sense of humanity. And Power Wellness has a fully developed medical integration model which would give the center the opportunity to improve population health by offering medical fitness programs for individuals managing a medical condition. In closing, it is my opinion that Power Wellness, as a management partner, would give the center its best chance of becoming financially self-sustaining and the very best chance of meeting its mission to enhance our region's quality of life by promoting health and wellness. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Francine.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to quick comment and thanks for serving on the board and going through all the for putting this forward to council. I just was keeping track. Do you happen to be a city or county resident?
I'm a county resident, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks. Oh.
Thank you, Francine. Anybody else like to speak? Any questions from council? Okay.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Yes.
Come up and say our piece. My name's Scott Kickbush. I live at 13 Pauline Lane here in Rolla. Just had a few questions about how exactly this would work because it's not entirely clear for me. What we're talking about, I guess, in terms of making up the shortfall in terms of the income would be their ability to bill insurance. Is this how that's going to work? I mean, I'm
that's
just trying to see how it's a viable plan, because, you know, we've been...
Well, it's a lot more complicated, and that would be just one piece of the puzzle, that part of it. But going back to what Francine said, they have an expertise on running these facilities. So you start with the basic block and tackle, and that would be to get membership up to where, I mean, at one point we had substantially more members than we did today, so there's an emphasis on that. There's an emphasis on increasing programs. There's an emphasis on raising revenues. That doesn't necessarily mean everybody's going to get a price increase, but what it does mean is the amount of money spent by a person will have to go up, and that could be done with add-on programs and servicing and health investment, health assessments, and things like that. And the medical integration part is the relationship between, let's give you a simple example. There are some people that have to have surgery that are not physically fit enough to have that surgery. So in that particular example, they may be referred to the center for a 6-week or 7-week program, if you will, to get in better shape, however we want to define that, in which case then they would be much more suitable for a particular type of surgery. Right now, in the case of, let's say you go to your doctor once a year. I go and he says, Lou, you got to watch your weight, you got to watch your diabetes, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah, thank you. And I go home and I forget about it, okay? Well, there's going to be an opportunity now where I will be encouraged to go to the center and have a formal program that is going to be designed for my particular health condition, if you will. Whether there's medical reimbursements through insurance, the answer to that is probably yes and no.
So just in terms of their evaluation of the center, they're seeing it as...
Well, some types of services are reimbursable, whether it's Medicare, Medicaid, or private health insurance, and some types of services are not. So the answer is both.
I mean, I looked at their, the list of the places that they operate, and there's, I mean, I recognized some of the names. Delnor was on there. My kids were born at Delnor, It's a hospital. The list of the places that they operate seem to be, fitness centers and hospitals, private fitness centers. The only one that I could see that appeared to be municipally owned was in Orland Park, but it had originally been a medical facility. I didn't really see anything on their list that would have been a building that was, paid for with public money. Is there any sort of difference in terms of their approach to operating the center versus, these fully commercial operations because of the community investment in the building?
I don't know what you're driving at, so let me take a whack at this. The fact that it's a community-owned facility is almost irrelevant. I mean, at the end of the day, we have a facility that needs to operate with financial sustainability. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter who built it. Doesn't matter who paid for it. That's a cold, hard reality.
Okay. So then in terms of the financial liability on the operation, are they...
The city is still going to own the facility. Mm-hmm. We are not losing ownership. It is still a city-owned asset.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your
Okay.
thoughts.
Could you ask anyone else out there if they want to speak?
It seems divided, so
I'm sorry, what did she say?
It's a little divided on the agenda, so the comments from the cannabis people, do we need to wait till then?
I can't hear you. All I heard was cannabis, and I've heard that for the last 6 months.
The agenda that you posted, it seems a little divided on public comments, so we didn't know if we were supposed to wait until the end.
No,
or-
this one is very specific to the center.
Okay. Well, let everybody.
Chief, is there anyone else out there that wants to speak about the center? Okay. Is there anyone else? Council comments? Questions? Marie?
I had an email from someone who couldn't be here this evening and had a couple specific questions. One was about employees, whether or not jobs would be lost or created by this this situation, and then also about, again, a question about public benefit and was there any vision for that? So I just wanted to put those questions forth on her behalf.
Let me take the first one. So the city will not have employees on the payroll at the center. They will be interviewed. The basic premise is that they will then go to work for Power Wellness. I would tell you that there's probably positions that will be added because in the last couple of months we have lost people for various reasons. They've moved away and whatnot. And we intentionally did not fill those positions. So poor Marcy's been working overtime plus. So is she here? I'm sorry? She's probably working, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so there'll probably be positions added from the present payroll. As far as the public benefit, I'm not so sure I understand that question.
Well, I think the question was specifically if there would be any way for low-income families to access the facility under this plan.
The short answer to that is probably yes. There is a foundation that currently exists. To what extent it could be expanded, I don't know that answer.
So would a fair answer to the question be that all of those programming decisions are still yet to be decided, and management of the facility is going to go largely into the purview of Power Wellness? The city will have input, but they'll make most of the decisions. Is that a fair answer to that question?
I think that's a fair answer. So the city will get a budget, if you will. I want to say 90 days before our budget, John? Yeah, both parties will sit down. We will get a budget. And that'll be all parts, right? Expenses, fees, programs, and so on and so forth. There'll be weekly meetings that John will have with his counterpart associated with Power Wellness. So the answer to that is yes, we are a partner. But let's be realistic. Something's got to change, okay? I mean, if you can't keep doing what we've been doing for 18 years, and continue to do that with somebody else. So they are going to make changes. To what extent, we don't necessarily know at this point. But they will be driven to increasing programs, increasing memberships.
Thank you.
Rachel?
Okay, thank you, Lou. I also had some questions raised via email from constituents. One had to do with the concern about, does Power Wellness taking over mean that membership fees are going to drastically increase? I think in terms of that sort of like, is that how they're going to make up the difference? And then another question was sort of just how were they checked out, right? Could you talk a little bit about how we evaluated Power Wellness? You know, did we talk to former clients, current clients?
Okay, let me split that question into two pieces, and then I'm going to defer to Francine. Francine has spent an incredible amount of hours talking to various folks with that second part of the question. A part of that is the membership fee, but for the most part, we don't have enough bolt-on or added services to drive that extra revenue. So in the next couple of years, they are going to get the revenue per person up significantly. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be on the backs of the membership fee per se. And there will still be ample parts of that building for public use. Basically, the way that building was designed is everything in the front, the fireplace room and all of that, will remain very active for public use. It's fully intended that the artwork and things like that will stay. Francine, you want to talk about the due diligence?
So once the decision was made that Power Wellness was our preferred partner, I was asked to conduct due diligence on Power Wellness, meaning checking references. So we identified the Power Wellness managed centers that we wanted to reach out to. And as I said earlier, they manage about 30 sites. So we looked at the list, we determined what ones we wanted to talk with, and then I personally conducted the reference checks. We talked to current Power Wellness clients, and we talked to a former Power Wellness client. And one client was a municipality like Rolla. They had been a client for 4 years. One was a community recreation center, which was characterized by the client as a locally owned YMCA, and they had been a client for 11 years. The former client was, this was interesting, an investor group that ultimately sold its fitness center to LA Fitness after 11 years. So I developed a set of questions to ask and sent it around to those on the committee to react to. So we came up with these questions as a guideline. And so I can summarize the findings if you'd like.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the findings, as I summarized them, were Power Wellness is extremely competent and national leader in successfully managing these kinds of centers. It's a great management partner, very responsive and professional. Power Wellness has exceptional deep resources, such as marketing, HR, legal, information technology, purchasing, accounting, marketing and sales, and medical integration. The references also said that transitioning to Power Wellness was seamless, easy, and transparent to members, and that Power Wellness had increased membership with each client that I talked with, and Power Wellness improved the financial position of each client I talked to, preventing one client from filing bankruptcy, bringing one client back from the brink of financial disaster, and helping one client break even within 3 years with a net profit projection going forward. The references also said that medical integration, building a mutually beneficial relationship with a local health system or hospital or groups of physicians, is what Power Wellness does best. It's the only management company that has a fully developed medical integration model. We talked to some other companies that were kind of dabbling in it and wanted to get into it, but this was the only company that had a fully developed and operational medical integration model. Each client we talked to indicated it would be absolutely, that they would absolutely select Power Wellness if it had to select a management company again. All of the references were extremely positive with no negative comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ian?
Going off of Marie's comment, I have also been contacted by people who are lower income who are wanting access to this. Most of them utilize the community health center in Rolla, and that is sliding scale. So is it possible for us in our negotiations to make it so that there are sliding scale services so that we are not just seeing one class of people have access to this?
We could ask Deanne, but I don't want to make that promise. And I don't want to make that promise because...
But it's possible. That's all I'm asking. It's possible for us to make that ask, and if they say no, then it's possible for us to...
We can make the ask, but beyond that, look, if we're going to start to tell them how to run the business and what to charge and have sliding scales and this, and this, then what are we trying to accomplish?
Making it a community center for everybody.
Deanne, those are nice words. the reality of it is, it has to be fiscally sustainable. That is not a negotiable point. It really isn't.
And I agree with that, but I mean, our
So-
community health
So
center is
what you're really
figuring out the way
doing
to do
is,
it.
you're letting the experts get you there. And it may be having different rates, and it may be having a sliding scale to get more members to come in and pay. But I can't sit here and tell you or promise you that that's what they're going to do.
I didn't ask for a promise, I asked for a possibility, so thank you.
We will ask. That's what I'm committing to. Marie? David?
I just have a couple things. So I think we have come to a spot where I don't think any of us, when we started this, those folks that were on council back then, thought that we were projecting that we would be in this kind of spot in 18 years. Our goal was obviously to try to have it always running in the positive, or at least recapturing almost all that it needs for its running place. We had many years where we didn't kind of reach the goals we wanted. But I just want to, not in the interest of, I do think we're at a point where we don't have many options. So I understand where we need to look at this power wellness as one of our the main option at this point. But I just wanted to make sure that we're not overlooking some other things, and I just wanted to ask the questions to see if we have a kind of answers or backup to this. So when we did collect money to build the center, we built the center and we had some of that tax money left over to supply things like a new roof, a new air conditioner, were that to break. We're now down to the point, because we've been using that money to cover any fixes, but also the actual running of the facility, we're down to a lower amount. That's kind of pushed us to where we need to look for things like power wellness. So my question is, I just want to bring it up because I'd hate for us to have something like this happen and not quite have a plan. But for example, if the AC did break or something did need replaced, what would be our mode of working on that? Because I know power wellness wouldn't be fixing that. That would be up to us. So that's one question. And then, if for those years we're taking a loss and we don't have the money in the account to do that, which is what they're projecting, that we will get to a point where we don't have the money to cover it during their tenure or the first couple of years while they're trying to make a profit. And I know we've talked about a loan from another department in the city, for example. Just want to check if, for example, power wellness, we're all hoping, fingers crossed, power wellness is going to turn this around, but I just want to bring it up because it's worth asking. If they're not able to turn it around, what would happen if the city can't, the center couldn't pay the city back that loan? So those are kind of two monetary-based questions that I was just going to get a better idea on.
Okay, so I wouldn't assume that we're going to borrow money from another department. But your questions are good questions and well noted. When the original modeling for the center was done 18 years ago, it was known that the tax receipts, there was a sunset, and it was known that the tax receipts would exceed the amount of money needed to build a facility and pay its debt. That facility, originally we had talked about putting more lap lanes in, and somebody wanted an extra gymnasium, but the amount of money that was eventually spent was limited to the bonding capacity that the city had at the time. There was projected, John, I'm going to say $4 to $5 million that there would be built up in an escrow fund that would be used for a number of things. It would smooth out the off years, if you will. It would go to expansion. If another gymnasium was needed at some point, somebody talked about maybe an ice skating rink or any one of a number of things that we couldn't provide because of the bonding capability. Another purpose of the money was to pay for those big ticket items when a pool pack goes down or an air conditioning system or a roof. It was always envisioned that we would never let that fund get below, and I'm going to say, John, $1 million is kind of critical. Well, look, folks, we paid the price. We've been talking about this for a number of years with inaction. What we're talking about today should have been done years ago. That's the cold, hard reality. So now we're to the point where there's incredible, incredible pressure on Power Wellness to deliver by all means necessary. But what if we don't? And the short answer to that is, I sit here today, I don't have an answer for you. We may have to go to a bank and borrow some money, but we're not there yet.
Thank you. And the last thing I have was I just want to hit on kind of second what was said about the community aspect. I know that a lot of people, when this did go through, it sounded like I wasn't here at the time, so I don't know the discussion, but I know a lot of folks, part of their upset, there was a lot of things they're upset about, and we can kind of agree on a lot of those. One thing that was really sold, though, was like, this can be, and we've tried to sell it for a long time, a community center, a place that people can gather. We obviously have... It was never advertised or promised to be a community center. That is not correct. Okay, I thought I understood that at least there was meant to be like community type things happening there.
The answer
I mean,
to that is
not by
yes.
itself a community center in the sense that anybody can use it for free, but certainly part of its mission was to serve the community, I think. At least that's the way I understood it. And so I understand we don't really have good solutions for that at this moment, but I know that that's something that our community, one of the things that they bring up and citizens bring up, and if there's any way we can still find ways that our community can benefit from it, especially people who are senior citizens who may not be able to afford, or at-risk youth who would love a place to be able to come after school and have, a safe place that they can exercise and be a little more healthy, and those kinds of things. I know that this particular scenario, having to make the profit, isn't really focused on that, but I just wanted to mention it because I know a lot of citizens have, and I certainly haven't forgotten about those citizens' comments, and if there's any way to look at how that can be integrated in the future, I'm sure our citizens will appreciate it.
Yeah, Power Wellness is aware and committed to having public access to that building. Again, the way that building is designed is that entire front portion is currently available for those things. I think they understand, and they have various programs, and I think the presentation that they made when they were here last time will show programs that they have specifically for seniors and programs they have for at-risk use. So they do those things now. Whether or not they could be free or not is a different question. I can't tell you that. Maybe they could be on a sliding scale. I don't know. But I can tell you that they fully intend to have programs that cover the entire spectrum of the community.
Sure. I totally understand. I just know that a lot of at-risk youth and senior citizens don't have the income to put toward it unless they do have a medical issue like you've mentioned. So maybe that would be one of the ways if someone has diabetes or those kinds of things. So I just wanted to put it out there. Thanks for answering.
Any other questions? More citizen comments? Okay, if not, moving on to reports of mayor and city council reports. There are 10 reports. Are there any questions regarding those? Moving on to old business. First item is an ordinance amending section 3016 of the code pertaining to plea and pay. John?
No.
Oh, John, don't let me explain this one.
John, we need you.
Turn your volume up.
Get it working. No.
Oh, no, he has to.
We're going to need a glass room for him down here to contain him. Bubble.
You probably could just call in.
Somebody bring
Maybe you
John
can
some
call it. Can
headphones.
you call it?
God, how could this be? He's 2 floors above us.
Why did you have to get COVID?
Is Rob still here?
Turn your volume up. Stephanie's on the move.
Hit the bathroom while this is going on.
Did we approve? So now, John is still.
I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. I can hear him just in my office.
You can hear him.
I can hear him. Where's the audio?
It sounds like he needs to turn his volume up.
It's my phone. You know you can do that. By the way, I noticed all your little bird houses. I love it. Do you get a lot of birds living in it, or is it just mainly just you?
They're just for some here to love yard sales and stuff.
Very whimsical. Yeah.
Where is the sun?
You got a
Dinner break.
That's all right. Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
All right. Thank you, Rob. I was about to put my mask on and make an appearance.
We can't see you
But
now.
now we can't see him.
Rob?
Stephanie?
We good?
We can't see you.
She's gonna fix it.
Takes a village.
Our own wellness program walking up front.
Okay.
There we go.
There you go.
Audio and video. Video.
Okay, is that better?
Looks great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go before it quits.
Test 1, 2.
You good? You good?
Good.
Can you hear us now? Can you hear us, John? Can't hear us.
Okay. But thanks for the technical difficulty and trying to stay quarantined as the health department is advising. So a couple more days, I'm anxious to get back out to the world. Do represent the next item, which is a final reading on an amendment to section 30-16D4. It's an issue that the judge raised in July. We've taken a couple of meetings to discuss it. Basically, for very small quantity marijuana possession, under 10 grams for a first-time offense, we have a mechanism in our ordinance that allows that defendant to plead guilty and to pay a fine of $100 and never have to appear in court. That is not consistent with OSCA's uniform plead and pay program. And initially, we were under the impression that if we chose to continue, we risked our violations bureau, which we have since cleared up and clarified that that is not the case. But if we don't amend the ordinance, we simply can't, or the judges determined that he is not able to comply with the ordinance. He is still compelled to require that a defendant, and we're only talking again for a first-time offender under 10 grams, to still make an appearance in court, and a mutual consent of the parties then would determine that fee of not to exceed $100. So the suggestion remains, despite lots of tangent issues perhaps that are worth debate and discussion, we would just like to make this particular section consistent with other plead and pay provisions of OSCA, of state law, and to remove that language that allows that under small quantity marijuana. So the answer would be that they'd have to make their appearance. We know over the last 2 years it's averaged about 30, 32 cases a year. So less than 3 a month. It's not a significant occurrence, and that's a marijuana possession issue entirely in municipal court. The number of those is a first-time offense under 10 grams are going to be a small percentage of that. We just don't have that data at this point. So I'm happy to answer questions. I think Carolyn is there, and I believe Brad was hoping to make the meeting. I don't know if he has. Certainly be happy to answer any questions from council.
Any questions from council? David?
Yeah, I got a couple. John, can you hear me?
I can, but I would encourage all the council, if you would, speak into the mics, because I have noticed it is difficult to hear if you're not really projecting into the mics.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to go over a couple things. Like John had mentioned, we were here, I think it was 2 meetings ago, discussing with the judge who came in front of us, and he talked about, one of his big things was talking about the plead and pay. And actually, his question was a lot about the fact that if we weren't to change this, we would consider losing all of our clean pay for traffic tickets, for seat belts, for any basic stuff that people just normally like to pay their ticket and be done. So we were looking at the possibility of losing all that ability if we kept the marijuana plead and pay in there. And there was a number, one of those things that went along with that was the idea that we might need to hire more staff upstairs. We were looking at maybe $40,000, $50,000 for a salary and health care and all that to potentially have to hire someone else to do all this work that we wouldn't be able to accomplish with plead and pay because everyone would have to show up for court. So I wanted to get a little deeper into a couple things. One is, as we've had these discussions, a lot of people at home may not know this, but council has, some of you have sent us emails before. We have emails, and we send them between each other as a group often to talk about the different topics that are coming up, and sometimes we're solicited for input. Hey, what do you think we need to be looking at for this ordinance, et cetera. And in this last few weeks, I've had some emails that were sent sometimes as a group and sometimes to an individual person that had been flagged for the sunshine law, and I don't know how many folks know that, but obviously we as the body have to be very open, and the idea of sunshine is to make sure that the light is there on everything. And when I write an email, I'm under the understanding that anyone could sunshine law that request so they could read any one of my emails. So I certainly don't put anything in my emails that I wouldn't want the public to be able to look into. And so I was surprised to get a few emails back that cited the sunshine law, and I think this might be a topic to bring up farther in council comments. But the reason I'm bringing it up now is because at that last meeting, not the one where we were presented by Judge Crump, but at the last meeting, we were presented like John did there, a little bit of an intro, and it was kind of like, okay, any questions? And we had a councilman who did ask the question, and all of a sudden we got a bunch of new information, and that new information told us that actually there had been a phone call with something called OSCA, the Office of the Supreme Court Administrator, and during that meeting, which our attorney at the time, Lance Thurman, told us that on Friday the 17th he spoke, that was the weekend before our meeting on Monday, which would have been the 18th, 19th, 20th, that before that meeting, on Friday he had a meeting with, I believe, and Mr. Neckerman, I believe is here, he might be able to comment, but I think it was the prosecutor, the judge, Mr. Thurman, and two folks from OSCA. And we were, at that moment, after we'd explained everything and the questions began, we were told some brand new information. We'd not gotten it all weekend. We'd not gotten an intro to the ordinance, the new change in the ordinance. We got it only after questions from a councilman. And so I have a few questions in regard to that, and those questions deal with, number one, when the conversation took place. We were told that it happened on the Friday the 17th, which meant, well, you know, it's hard to get emails out on the weekend, and even though we had all day Monday to get those emails, we didn't get any new information through that to use in our deliberation. And partly my question is, why didn't council get that information? Why wasn't that information, if we're talking about sunshine and light and trying to let everyone know the information, how did that not get to us from our attorney, our judge, our prosecutor to us? The question also is, did anyone else get sent the information that would have been able to get a look at it? I don't know, for example, I would ask the mayor or administrator if they got that information on Thursday, Friday, or the weekend. And the reason I ask this is just, it's important to me that we get all the information we need to deliberate. And what we found out with that new information from OSCA was that actually, just as was presented here, we're not looking at $40,000 for having to hire somebody. We're not looking at all our cases going to plead and pay. We're not looking at any of those things, and it seemed like it was information that we weren't getting for some reason. And to be honest, the impact actually is greater than the intention. The impact was we didn't have that information to deliberate on, and it only came out because a council person asked. So I asked those few questions again, partly to our mayor and our administrator and to our legal attorney here, which is representing Mr. Thurman, who gave us the information. Where did that information go, and what was the reason we didn't have it before the meeting or before we asked questions?
Boy, that's a lot. I'll answer much more succinctly. It was an oversight on our part. In hindsight, should we have mentioned it at the start of the council meeting? Absolutely. Is there an insinuation that it was kept away intentionally? That's insulting.
It's an observation.
It's an observation that comes across as insulting. You questioned...
I certainly am.
You questioned the competency of our lawyer. Be that as it may, if we had to do it over again, in the preamble on Monday night, we would have mentioned it.
So question for you, Mr. Mayor, did you have any of that information through verbal, through emails, through telephone calls, through any communication? Did you have that information before Mr. Mush asked the question? Did you or Mr. Butts have the information?
My recollection is probably on Monday. In the big scheme of things, I think it's almost irrelevant. We can drone on about this. I can sit there and tell you we should have said it on a Monday. It doesn't change the decision that we have to make here and now.
It doesn't, but the thing it does change is that we almost didn't get the new information without questioning coming from council to pull it out. And my question is, shouldn't we, my observation, shouldn't we be provided that information before we start to question or deliberate?
Okay, so I just told you. The answer is yes. If we had to do it over again on Monday, if Lance would have thought, or John would have thought, or I would have thought about it, we would have said, oh, by the way, we got some more information from Oscar.
Okay.
Yeah.
My observation...
How much are we going to belabor
So
this
my
point?
observation is that it seemed like, and this is just an observation, certain topics, certain information comes out, or a plethora of information comes out, and other topics, let's try to hold, let's try to control. That's what it felt like as an observation. It's not an accusation, it's just an observation based on what went on. And I think it's worth bringing up because at the same time, myself, I've had, especially when I bring up this topic, I haven't gotten it on COVID, I didn't get it on any questions about the center, but when I brought up this topic, plead and pay, cannabis, marijuana, all of a sudden, sunshine, there's something that I can't talk about.
I don't think
No, I
that's
don't think
correct.
that's
Now, hold on, you can answer
I did get
in
a few
second.
emails like that, and it's like...
What Lance explained to you in a very, very lengthy email was why, on that interchange that you were going back and forth with council, you exceeded what would have been under the normal sunshine. So let's disclose the whole truth here.
I'm not,
It didn't pertain to all...
Give me the email, anybody wants it. I mean, I'm fine with that if that's
Okay,
okay
go
with
ahead,
sunshine.
Well, obviously, I wasn't here at those two
Obviously,
meetings.
right.
But I think the note, if you're talking about the email you were sending, asking the council for input, it is information and procedural questions don't violate the sunshine law. That's not the issue. However, your email was asking questions to such an extent of wanting to get feedback of how people may vote and that kind of thing, and that is where Lance, as your attorney as part of this council,
Sure.
not a personal attorney for anybody here,
Sure.
but for the council, for the city, was making the point for your protection as part of the council, that as members of the city council, there should not be that extension of the discussion for that type of feedback.
Sure.
That's what the caution was.
Okay.
If you didn't like it, I'm sorry.
No,
We're not
not that
here
I
to
don't
give
like
news
it.
that you
Nope.
want to hear.
Not interested in that. But I am interested in understanding how the sunshine law applies, where it applies. So I don't have a problem with
The sunshine law,
learning
like
about that.
most laws, is fluid. It depends on the facts at the time. Simply because something you asked about COVID procedure or anything like that, you didn't breach that extension.
Sure.
I can't tell you every day what is X or Y. Things like that are a spectrum.
Sure.
There's a broad scope there. And so maybe it's simply the opportunity to say, okay, guys, be careful, we're getting close to that brink,
Sure.
close to that edge. This is not a discussion or a decision to be made in emails. And I think that was Lance's intent, was to protect everyone on the council.
Sure.
And more importantly, to protect the city from violating something that they are not allowed to violate.
And I think explaining that a little better certainly helps me learn. I do not know everything about it, and I want to learn more. So I appreciate the fact that Lance and our attorney law firm is helping us do that. So I do appreciate that. My other question then, to clarify the topic a little more, is what is the obligation or understanding from the law firm with our city that we have of this dissemination, how it should be disseminated. What is your understanding of, you get some new information like that, how you get it out to council, or who you go to get it out? Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, if I understood the question, I could. That was
Sure.
rather broad.
Okay, I can specify if you need.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so can you explain, in this particular situation, you as a law firm, Lance, at this particular position, received some information. What is the way in which you would understand that information would be then disseminated for us to be able to have, to deliberate with?
We say this all the time in the law, I can't speculate as to somebody else. Lance and I do practice in the same firm, we practice law, but everybody's interpretation and expression of that may be different. I'm not having been at that meeting and heard how exactly this all transpired, it's hard for me to comment on. If you'd had that information, I don't know that it meant what you think it meant, but you seem to have taken some offense to it, or somehow your observation is somehow suspect, and you seem to have run with that, which is unfortunate.
You're painting it in a certain way, Carolyn, but the truth is, I explained how we didn't get all the information before we started asking questions and deliberating. That seems pretty odd for a body that's supposed to be making decisions on ordinances. That's, I'm not trying to paint a situation, that's what happened.
Well, I don't know that I necessarily agree on the way you've painted the situation, but I wasn't here.
Okay,
So.
I'm not sure what I'm missing or what you see as different, but.
Listen, I feel like you're arguing with me, and you're not going to argue with me to change my opinion about something.
Right.
All right, first of all.
Okay.
Just because you don't like the answer. And I
Great.
think the same goes for Lance, and the same goes for any attorney you might hire.
Sure.
Or the council may decide to have. We're not here just to agree with your position.
Nope, I'm not asking to. My question was actually about how you would have handled, or how you expect your law firm to handle that situation where something like that were to come up. This specific situation, how would that information get disseminated?
You're
to the council?
asking me to tell you hindsight, how something might have been handled differently? I mean, I'm not really sure what you're asking me. Is this an interview? I
How
feel like
would you
you're attacking me a little bit.
How would you handle this if this same type of topic came up in the future? What is your understanding of how we would get the information? That's all
I
I'm
think,
asking.
David, let's put the grandstanding aside here for a
I'm not
second.
trying to grandstand, I'm
No,
trying to understand.
baloney.
We didn't get the information on a topic. That's
Okay.
important.
If this was really relevant to the decision, I'd be right in your camp. This is so damn trivial to the discussion. Pick another
Why is
topic.
that trivial to want all the information and question why we didn't get it? I'll leave it there, I guess. If no one else sees that as trivial, we didn't get the information, and I'm trying to find out what's the way we would get it in the future for something like this. I don't really have much else I can say, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Dan?
I spoke with Lance after the last meeting, asking him specifically about this.
Dan, can you be more in your mic?
Yes. I spoke with Lance after the last meeting, directly after the last meeting, asking him specifically about this and the timeline of how this all happened. I asked him why he didn't send it to all of City Council. He told me he sent it to our city administrators, assuming that it would be sent to all of us, and it wasn't. He said that. He's not here today. I actually wanted to thank him for clarifying that, because I was still confused about that last time we met. Since he's not here, I can't thank him for that, but I can say that he and I spoke after last week, after the last meeting, and he confirmed that. So I understand what you're saying, Dave, that you feel like it was hidden, but I understand what you're saying, Mr. Mayor. You feel like it was an error. I don't know what it was, but I can say that Lance told me that he absolutely sent it to our city administration with the assumption that it would be sent to all of us. Thank you.
That's my understanding as well, but that was not the question that Mr. Schott was asking me. So, just...
Still never got to answer that.
Yeah, so I think that probably, in my opinion, what leaves a bad taste in our mouth is that this particular ordinance was presented to us as an emergency because of this information that we were going to lose our plead and pay system. And then when administration learned that that was no longer the case, if that was relevant information in the introduction of it, then I feel like that should have been information that was considered not trivial but relevant on the back end of it.
I don't think we asked you to take action that night, so I don't know that it was quote-unquote an emergency, although the judge might have made that request, wasn't city administration.
At least urgent.
At least urgent. That was his request. Let's go back here with our responsibility and with the judge. The judge is the one that brought this to our attention. The judge is the one that had a sense of urgency, and the judge is the one that brought us the initial information that came from Oscar. That was not Lance, that was not John Butts. Okay? So, again, in hindsight, last Monday, yes, we should have mentioned it. But I don't know that it changes any of the outcome or the decision that you have to make. Should we have mentioned it? Yeah. John, yeah, maybe.
I would just add, it may not change the outcome, but the overarching principle, at least for the way that I operate, I want all the information dumped out on the table so I can sift through it that helps me to make the best decision I possibly can. And in this particular instance, I'll concede perhaps it doesn't make a difference, but the principle matters to me very much.
It was an oversight on our part. And if we agree with that, we'll be friends. Insinuating something else, and we're going to have a problem. So just take it for that. John?
It seems like it's been, this is the third meeting since the judge spoke. I asked a question 2 weeks ago, which then helped clarify the situation. We're just now getting to the second reading tonight. So we've had 6 weeks, and this is the third meeting. I don't see that anything is, things come out when we have discussions. I feel like you guys are kind of blowing this out of proportion, personally.
David?
I just wanted to make a point that it has been 6 weeks, and that does give you time to deliberate, awful lot of time, 6 weeks. But it did change halfway through. That's the point I'm making. I did have a question for for the city administrator, John. Can you tell us a little bit about your decision, or if you got this information and what your idea of how it was going to get out?
Sure. I did the agenda write-up on Thursday when we would have sent that out, and I wasn't aware that any of that was going on. And I can't remember if it was Friday afternoon, evening, or Monday. I just don't remember when. I heard from Lance. Quite frankly, I don't recall now if it was an email, a text, or a phone call. And he said, hey, we had a conversation with Oscar. Oscar's interpretation initially was an error. The judge got that information, ran with it. And so I should have, in hindsight, when I presented mine, introduced the issue. I wish I would have said, here's a little bit more information of what happened. Quite frankly, I didn't see it as relevant to the amendment to the ordinance. And I wasn't really sure how to say the judge presented information inaccurately portrayed from Oscar, because I simply didn't know the issue very well. It wasn't an issue I initiated. It wasn't an issue I researched. I picked it up after the judge did. So, I'm not pointing the fingers or trying to shift the blame at all. I'm happy to take responsibility. I did not think it was really relevant to council's action for first reading. To raise it, and in hindsight, I wish I had.
Thank you.
Any other council comments? If not, can we have a final reading?
An ordinance amending section 30-16D4 of the Code of the City of Rolla, Missouri relating to marijuana possession.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. Roll call vote.
Bolin?
Yes.
Higgins?
Yes.
Reuter?
Yes.
Schott?
No.
Allen?
No.
Murphy?
Yes.
Lyons?
No.
Corral?
Yes.
Muse?
Yes.
Florence?
Yay.
Eberly?
Yes.
Schneider?
Yes.
9 ayes and 3 nays.
Motion is approved. Moving on to new business. First item is an ordinance readopting the procedure to disclose potential conflict of interest. John?
Yeah, this is really a state law that has a provision that all of the officers are to file an annual financial disclosure report. That same law has a provision that says cities can adopt their own financial disclosure policy, and Rolla has used the exact same policy for at least the 23, 24 years I've been here. I'm going to guess it's probably on the books for 25 to 30 years. It basically says that we're going to exempt all of the council members from doing that unless they have a financial conflict, and then they have to file it. But it names specifically that the mayor, the general manager for RMU, the finance director, and the city administrator do file that report. But the law goes on to say you have to readopt your local policy every 2 years. So we are submitting this for a first reading. I think we have to file it with the state by the end of August or early September. We're recommending we just renew our ordinance provision of the last, for the next 2 years, that basically requires those 4 parties to file an annual report, and any council member that has a financial conflict to file that annually with the state.
Any questions for John? Jody?
So John, are there any changes in this version from what we looked at the last time we did this?
Nope, exact same wording.
There's no questions. First reading, please.
An ordinance of the City of Rolla, Missouri, repealing Section 2-237 of the Code of City of Rolla, Missouri, a procedure to disclose potential conflicts of interest and substantial interest for certain municipal officials, and enacting a new section in lieu thereof.
Next item is a motion to approve the fiscal 2020 budget adjustment for a use tax.
Yeah, this is you know, a little unfortunate that we're doing it now and not 3 or 4 months ago, but COVID just threw a wrench into, I think, everyone's plans. Just a little history. Remember that the voters approved with a 56% margin, 56 to 44 margin, to approve the use tax in November 2019. That sales tax basically is applied to out-of-state purchases, internet purchases, as long as they've got a physical presence in Missouri. And that took effect on April 1. That's when the user would have begun paying it. That goes to the businesses in the month of April. Businesses file it with the state in May. The state sends that to, distributes that to taxing jurisdictions in June. So everything has a 2-month lag from transaction to receipt. So the City of Rolla has received 2 months remittances from the state for April and May. We received those in June and July. So far, we've received $52,000. An average of $26,000 a month. It was about $15,000 the first month, about $37,000 the second month. I'll tell you, the second remittance included Amazon, which was a significant part of that. So we'll see that larger rate, presumably going forward, as long as Amazon files monthly. But we've only got the $52,000. The fiscal year ends in another, 7 weeks at this point, and so we were debating whether to sort of front load this and do something more timely this spring for police and firefighters. But with COVID and the economic impact and the slowdown, we just weren't comfortable financially being able to do that. And you'll see next year as we present the budget at the end of August, we've got some real financial challenges as a result of COVID and just economic circumstances. That being said, we're very fortunate to have the voter support for the use tax, and we are committed to putting the use tax towards public safety first and foremost. Number 1 on that list was compensation, and then we would use some of those funds for equipment replacement and furnishings, things in the buildings themselves at the police station, fire station, animal control, and then if we satisfy all of those unmet needs, we could address other needs in the general fund, but it's going to be a few years before that's going to be able to happen. So what we would like to do is do a $1,500 lump sum distribution in fiscal year 20. We'd like to do that in the month of August, and just get that out to all 66 police and firefighters and animal control officers. That doesn't affect the dispatchers, where there's another 18 or so. They're funded through the Phelps County Emergency Service Board, and it's up to them as to how they want to compensate their employees. But this would address the 66, 67 police officer firefighters and expend a good chunk of the 2021 proceeds that we didn't have budgeted. So part of what we have before you is a budget adjustment that's showing a revenue that will be for about 6 months of the fiscal year of $150,000, and then conversely, this lump sum payout in August of $1,500 per police and firefighter. That's about 3% if you look at an average wage of a police and firefighter sitting at about $46,000, $48,000. But clearly, our intent is not to do this going forward lump sum. We're building into next year's budget that you'll see another 6 weeks, another 4 weeks, a 5% pay increase across the board for all police and firefighters. But we do want to spend some of this 2021 money as we feel pretty confident we're going to acquire at least that much in this year. So it's not just that payment. We also have to pay FICA, and loggers is a part of that. So you roll that all together, we're proposing a budget adjustment that would be approximately $128,000 to expend, and then again we'll tackle next year as a part of base wages, and we hope going forward we'll do base wages throughout. I would say that we cannot just do a lump sum bonus. The state auditors slapped our hands a number of years ago when we did that with some one-time telecommunication funding. We did that for all city employees, and the state auditor said that was inappropriate compensation after the fact. So one of the things we have to do, and we did this about 10 years ago when we did a lump sum payment for police officers for retention purposes. In that case, we had them sign a agreement that they'll stay in the city's employment for a year. And what we're proposing now is that they would sign an agreement that they would stay in the city's employment through the end of 2020. So for the next 6 months, in essence. That's an exchange of services for something being rendered going forward. We'll put that on a payroll. In turn, the officers and firefighters would sign that they will stay in the city's employment through the end of December. If they should choose to leave prior to that, they actually would have to pay back that bonus. This is about a retention issue. It's about compensation base wages and retention as we look at fiscal year 2021. So we have before you a budget adjustment that takes those two actions into effect. Again, just a stopgap for fiscal year 2020 as a way of expending some of the dollars that the voters approved last November. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions for John?
I have one.
Yeah?
Yeah, and it may not be, I would like to have an explanation of the state's obligation to enact the use tax for out of town. My understanding is that our state legislature hasn't enacted the use tax for purchases.
I think I heard the question, Ann. You were asking about the legislative action on the Streamlined Sales Tax Pact.
Right.
We think that's very important that the legislature do that. We have been encouraging through Missouri Municipal League for years that Missouri join. There's something like 37, 38 state Department of Revenues who have passed the legislation and formed this pact that allows them to share the databases that would allow a use tax transaction when they don't have physical presence in your state. So that's still important to do. We think Missouri legislature should enact that. We're hoping federal and Congress takes a similar action to eliminate some of these issues about commerce and state lines and the transportation of taxation across state lines. So we took the first step, which was really important. We joined something like 65 or so other cities and counties that have done it. We need to have this use tax apply to all internet and out-of-state transactions. For Missouri to pass that legislation, and that would share that data between, again, all of those state Department of Revenues who have joined the pact. That's what Missouri's action would be. And then again, federally, it would allow all of 50 states to be able to share those databases. So we will see more money from the use tax, and potentially significantly more money, if Missouri does that. And until they do, we're limited to just those purchases by internet activity or out-of-state vendors when they have a physical presence somewhere in Missouri.
Right.
So we're gaining somewhere between $300,000 to $400,000 a year under the local use tax issue. That does a lot for us for public safety, but even that doesn't solve all of our general fund needs and all of our public safety needs. Things like the radio replacements, things like cameras, that's not going to be satisfied with $300,000 a year. We're going to need to have the state activity really make sure that we're appropriately applying that, or the state is appropriately applying the use tax for all of those internet purchases, but that's going to be another year or two before we think that gets done.
Have other state legislatures incorporated that?
They have something like 30, and again, the numbers change as states take action. Last I heard, 35 to 38 states have done that, and they're sharing their databases, but they don't share that with Missouri if we don't have a physical presence in Missouri.
Thank you.
David?
I just have two quick ones. Not to get too in the weeds, John, but question is about what, with the 5% increase for all our public safety, how much of that use tax budget we'll be looking at per year, generally speaking, would go toward that, toward the 5%?
Yes.
I mean, I don't need an exact number, just trying to get an idea, ballpark. What
Yeah, I want to say just to do a 5% across the board for all public safety officers is something like $200,000.
Okay. Thank you.
What we're having to hang on to some of that is there are some other physical needs at the department, so we know that the HVAC unit needs to be replaced.
Right.
And we do think we're going to get another year out of our radios. That was a real concern.
Right.
That's $850,000, and we're going to finance that over somewhere between 5 and 10 years. And every year we can push that off. We're not having to spend about $80,000 on that annual lease payment. So we want to be a little cautious in case we end up with more radio problems than what we've been incurring.
Sure.
We're using some of our other Motorola's to take care of the others, and so we've got a few more of our spares here, but we've had to leave a little capacity for some of that equipment that if it just breaks, we're going to have to spend the dollars next year.
Right. And that was the other question. Obviously, I think this is really important. The citizens spoke and said, hey, we've got to increase our pay for our public safety. They're doing an amazing job for us. So I think this bonus and obviously the 5% is really important. I just wanted to make sure you mentioned what I was going to mention, which just was the air conditioning HVAC at the police station. I know that's been something Chief's mentioned. I just want to make sure we're not overlooking that in the hot time here. Is that something that is smart to make sure part of this money gets fixed for that? Or I just want to make sure that we're not overlooking that, because I've heard if there's a bunch of communications equipment that gets too hot, it could, that's $1 million gone.
Yeah, so in next, you'll see that roof unit. You'll see a couple of cars specifically for that. At the fire station, there is we need to do a vent system in one of the stations where we actually got a donation to pay a portion of the cost. So we do have to have, and next year's budget anticipates some capital expense out of the use tax. Otherwise, we need to blanket all of it towards compensation. But like you said, we simply cannot have the building uncomfortable, particularly for dispatch.
But I mean, I guess what I'm getting at, that it doesn't make sense for us to do anything with this 2020 budget to fix that, to make sure that we don't have any problems for the rest of the summer. You think it'll make it through till October when we rebudget?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jody?
So, I know that when we had the use tax voted on, we talked about making sure that it went to help our public safety folks. And I'm glad we're doing that. But I do, even though words are cheap, I would like to give a shout out also, thinking about the report we heard earlier. We have a lot of city employees who do a lot of good work, and I just want to make sure that they know that they're appreciated.
Thank you. Any other
Yeah,
questions?
for sure.
If not, is there a motion to approve the budget adjustment?
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Claims and fiscal transactions. The first one is awarding the pedestrian bridge accent lighting. Steve or Darren?
Yeah, as part of the Rolla Transportation Development District, they're building a pedestrian bridge on I-44 at E Highway. When the consultant was putting his plans together, they suggested that we bid lighting package through the city. Thought we might be able to get a little price. We did that, and We had 3 bids. Low bid is Butler Supply in Rolla, Missouri for $109,755.90. There's a picture of the bridge. The folks at Butler surprised us with an alternate bid, which they say is equivalent to the stuff that we spec on the bridge. We've given that information to our consultant, and I was hoping to have a recommendation at tonight's meeting. There's a artist rendering of what it would look lit up at night. The alternate is close enough to where the consultant has requested another week to take a good look at it. We would go ahead and award the bid to Butler Supply. They were low bid, and then consider their value engineering on the project, and if this lighting package is considered equivalent to the other, we recommend purchasing for $56,758.30. If it is not considered an equal substitute, we would then go ahead and go with the $109,755.90.
Any questions for Steve? If not, is there a motion to award the bid to Butler Supply with the alternate bid considered as an afterthought?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Stephanie, motion awarding health insurance excess coverage.
Good evening. In your packet tonight is the annual award for the health insurance excess coverage. The consultants Hayes have obtained 3 bids. We are planning on continuing with the $75,000 stop loss. I will make a correction in paragraph 2 where it says QBE. They have pulled their bid, so that should have been changed to Sun Life, so I apologize for that. The bid for this year, effective October 1st, 2020, will be $748,940. This is a 40% increase over 2019. And then also included in your packet is the employer-employee contribution that management uses on a regular basis. When we became self-funded, council agreed that if the city pays 67%, the employees would pay 33%. So you can see as of the end of June, the employee contribution is at 32.68%, so we are right in line with what we had projected. So unless there's any questions, it is staff recommendation to award the bid to the renewal of Sun Life for the stop loss of $75,000. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Stephanie? If not, is there a motion to award the bid?
Make a motion.
Is there a second? Jody, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No opposed. I think there's a lot of people here that want to talk about the marijuana issue. So I'm going to switch the city council comments and proceed to citizen communications. So let's start with the first item, and that is the legal opinion on marijuana possession penalties. So after a lot of debate last meeting and part of the meeting before, I think Marie summed up the issue very well with the last question of the night, and she said, what can we do and what would be the impact? I think that was the nature of it. So Carolyn and Lance has prepared a legal opinion on what it is, and what I asked them to do was to give us a legal opinion on what is in fact legal and defensible. So with that, Carolyn?
Well, we also asked Mr. Neckerman to be here today because I think one of the issues that is relevant for consideration as part of this opinion is what changing the range of punishment does and the type of discretion that a prosecutor has and why he may need discretion. So I had also asked that Brad be here today as well. If you wanted to step up here, Brad. I mean, I guess the first question I have is whether or not you have any questions about the legal opinion as presented to you and any of the subsequent information that followed.
Carolyn?
Rather than reading a legal opinion.
Well, yeah, they've read it presumably, but For the people that are here in the audience that have patiently waited for hours, can you
Sure.
give them the Cliff Notes version?
Well, I will try to do that. Basically, if the discussion or the decision or there's an idea to further pursue what has been referenced as a decriminalization of possession of marijuana, the legal recommendation would be to remove the jail time from the range of punishment, which was, well, no, that hasn't been done, and set a specific fine amount similar to the way the city handles parking tickets. I think Brad's opinion is relevant here as far as what kind of discretion he would be limited from using because of why he uses it one direction or the other. But I think the fact is that the city can remove the jail time from range of punishment. The city prosecutor is not already using jail as a punishment, is our understanding. There was nothing that could be found that would allow the city to require that the cases have to go through municipal court instead of state court. And so one consideration is that the people you are expressing a desire to offer some sort of protection to, their charges could now go to the state, which actually the range of punishment is more punitive than the city's range of punishment. So that is one possible outcome or effect of not charging or deciding not to charge or pursue cases in the city. Brad, did you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, well, Mayor and Mr. Butts invited me here to, first of all, I'm not here to tell you guys what to do. The voters elected me to enforce the laws, and they've elected you all to make laws. That said, I think my experience, it would be important to you to know what the best thing to do is based on how things actually occur. So I met with a couple councilmen a few weeks ago, and I guess when you do what I do, sometimes you forget that other people don't exactly realize how the process works. So just a real brief explanation for how a case is brought to court. So a police officer in the city of Rolla who arrests someone for an offense, say marijuana or say driving while intoxicated or stealing, where there's both a state law violation and a city violation. The first choice of where to send that is with the police officer themselves. The individual police officer writes a ticket to the offender and gives them a summons with the court date. They could either send it to city court or they could send it to state court. So I think some people may be surprised to know that decision is not the prosecutor's. It starts with the police officer. So that said, what I do with the case isn't necessarily dispositive as to what should happen, because even though what I would do with something in municipal court, if it's referred to state court, it doesn't even come through our city court. It would go straight to state court. I also wanted to point out that I think it's important for the punishments, as a prosecutor, what I see coming through court, punishments there's two things that they should be. Number one, they should be consistent. When you have the offenses I just said earlier, stealing, DWI, driving while revoked, those offenses in state court and city court, the ranges of punishment and the punishments that are used by the judges are nearly identical, which is, I think, a good thing for the citizens who may commit a crime. I don't think it's a good thing if someone commits a crime and if it goes one place it could be a $2,000 fine and another place it could be a $50 fine. I think that's something we should think about. And the state offense right now for possession of marijuana for a second offense is up to a $2,000 fine. Currently, it's a $500 fine here for a second offense. First offense is $100, and in state courts it's $500. So we already have a pretty wide variance between what can be done in city court versus what can be done in state court. The second thing I think is important is that crimes that the city and the state feel are crimes, there should be a deterrence effect. There should be a punishment that an offender does not want to. In other words, committing the crime again is more costly to that person than doing the crime itself, whether that be stealing, whether that be any crime. That's one of the basic ideas of the criminal justice system, is to keep people from breaking the law again. And so I think it's important to keep a level of punishment in place that would deter someone from committing that crime again. I'm not suggesting that marijuana offenses should be punishable by jail time. As the city council has been given the statistics from city court, very few, if any, offenders for possession of marijuana in city court are punished by jail. That said, I am currently the city prosecutor. I won't be the city prosecutor forever. So not all city prosecutors may have that view. So I don't want to stand here and pretend that every other city prosecutor is going to handle things the same way. I think the recommendation in the opinion from Mr. Thurman and Ms. Booth-Jost to eliminate jail time as a punishment is something that would not cause my office any problems or would not cause the criminal justice any problems. So I would concur in that opinion.
And just to note on top of that, that if you do eliminate the jail time, that doesn't, however, give the city, in our interpretation or our reading of this, the power to say that no appearance is required, as I think has been discussed before, just to make sure that we're on the same page.
And it also doesn't keep the police officer from referring the case to state court where jail time would be a possibility. So there's no action that the council can take that would prevent a police officer, in your opinion, which I concur with, from sending a case to state court as opposed to municipal court.
And there is one other level I do want to mention, because there was something brought up about a sanctuary city, and I don't know if that's going to be discussed again today or not, but if, I guess the only other action would be an affirmative action to try and prohibit either Rolla law enforcement from taking, from doing certain things with cases, basically disallowing the prosecution of them. And our interpretation of that is that would fly in the face of at least 2 state statutes that require municipalities, third-class cities like we are, from taking any action that is against the general laws of the state. So that's the next level of what can we do.
Carolyn, just for the benefit of the public, could you explain a little bit about the difference between a third-class city and a charter city?
Well, I don't have the definitions in front of me right now, but there are separate definitions in a charter city, such as St. Louis or Kansas City, I think is a charter city. They have a different set of rules of what they have to do. They have different obligations and reporting requirements or oversight with law enforcement. That tends to be one of the biggest differences, is what the powers of their law enforcement is. I did not bring that with me today. I apologize. But they are different types of cities. They have different requirements, and they have different statutory. They answer to different statutes, basically.
Jody?
So, you may not know the answer to this, but I'm curious what might cause an officer to determine that a citation needed to go to state court as opposed to municipal court?
That's a great question. I've talked to many officers about making that decision, and I can tell you the number one factor that goes into play in that officer's mind, most of them, is the offender's criminal history. If the person is a well-known offender, long criminal history, they're more likely to send that to state court where they where jail time would be a possibility and where they could be punished more severely. First-time offenders, I think, universally are sent through municipal court, with very few exceptions to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Matthew?
Mr. Neckerman, I know you also serve as a prosecutor at the state level, or assistant prosecutor. What would happen if a deputy sheriff or a highway patrolman pulls someone over in Rolla?
Well, the only offenses that are brought to municipal court, Mr. Crowell, are arrests made by Rolla police officers. Of course, highway patrol, sheriff's department, S&T cases also come here, but highway patrol, sheriff's department are patrolling city of Rolla. They patrol them often. They're both headquartered here. And if someone gets a ticket, they are summoned to state court automatically.
So if we decriminalized it, as there's been some discussion about, if a deputy pulled someone over in Rolla who had marijuana, or a highway patrolman pulls someone over, it's not decriminalized for them. They would still be sent to state court.
That's correct, and they don't have the ability to send a case to municipal court. They don't have the tickets. They don't refer cases. Only Rolla cases get referred here. So if someone were to commit a crime in the city of Rolla and there were no offense under the city terms, it would depend on then that officer would refer to state court regardless.
In reading Mr. Thurman's opinion here. At the bottom of the first page, he said it was important for us to note that all cases go through the city, all cases that go through the city are processed as ordinance violations, and which are not felonies or misdemeanors. And my concern, but you know, if a young person got caught with some marijuana, the misdemeanor offense is minor, I realize, but it could impact a scholarship potentially. And I've been questioned before, you know, if I've had any infraction other than a misdemeanor infraction other than a ticket violation. So I would like to see on at least our city level that if we can avoid jail time and if it's a one-time offense. And then again, I would like to know too what would happen if it happened again and again and again. You know, we have to make room for those kinds of adjustments as a city ordinance, I think.
David?
I want to clarify a couple differences between our current law and if we were to change something. So under our current law, if you receive something in the city office as a prosecutor, you could decide to send it to state court, currently.
That's correct.
If you receive something and we changed the current ordinance to what's being suggested, no jail time and a fine, or abolishing it completely, you could send it to state court, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I don't understand. You're saying if you abolish the punishment?
Okay. Yes, could you decide?
Well, Mr. Schott, I'm presuming if you abolish marijuana,
It wouldn't come to city court.
That's correct.
Okay.
The officer would refer it straight to state court.
So let me
It would never
clarify
come
that.
through me.
Okay, right. But if we did change it to not abolish, but to a fine, you or whoever is in the prosecutor's office could bump that to the state. So either way, whether, just to clarify, the current ordinance or a change other than abolishment, it could be sent to state court through you.
Yes, and what I was saying earlier about the officer making the initial determination.
Right.
The second person who can determine to send it to state court would be me.
Right.
When it comes through me, I can either keep it in city court or I can refer it to the state prosecution office.
So to clarify also, as an officer, today under the current law, they could choose to send it to city or state. If we change it to the no jail time, but fine, they could decide to send it to city or state, correct?
Yes.
And then if we abolished it, they could decide to do nothing or send it to state. So they would then have an option to do nothing under that.
Can you clarify what you mean by abolish?
No penalty for possession. There'd be no penalty.
You mean remove the ordinance?
like
repeal the
repeal
ordinance?
the
Repeal,
ordinance?
excuse me, thank you.
I mean, I suppose they could. I find it very unlikely that our officers, if there's a state law violation, would not send it to state, but I suppose they could.
Okay, thank you. I did have one other quick question, more for the opinion side of things. The opinion of our lawyers, it's, when it says my, was that Lance's
Yes.
specifically? Okay. So under Lance's opinion, and I guess I can't really ask him, but maybe you'd have an idea here.
Try.
Okay. The recommendation there was, one of the questions we have was what could we do? So I'm wondering how the recommendation fits into what could we do. One of the questions I have is, Mr. Thurman pointed out that in 2020, Kansas City approved a measure amending the city code so that marijuana possession is no longer a violation. I do understand Kansas City is not a third-class city, so that's one of the things I'm checking in on. But within the city limits, they could do that with this ordinance. The change in the local law enforcement does not alter the state law, nor does it prohibit county prosecutors from pursuing criminal charges. So is that one of the potential things we could do that maybe wasn't mentioned, or can we not do that?
First of all, Lance is telling you what you can do. He's not making necessarily a recommendation. That's your decision.
Okay, because it actually says my recommendation.
I understand, but, okay, I forget it.
I mean, that's what it says here.
Okay.
It's his recommendation. That's why I'm wondering, I kind of was wondering, I thought he was going to put out the list of choices so that we could see what the options were with the kind of understanding each one. But we basically got one recommendation as opposed to could we do what Kansas City did was my kind of question.
Well, again, Kansas City is a charter city, and one of the things that Lance had pointed out is that for the third-class cities, I know that 77.590 applies, and it says that you will enact and make such ordinances and rules that are not consistent with the laws of the state. So to say you are abolishing or repealing, either if you repeal it, I'm not sure that that will get the result that you all are, that doesn't seem, it seems counterproductive to what I'm hearing here that you guys are wanting to get as a result. But if you take an affirmative action that says you cannot do this, or you shall not do this, or you will not do this, then you are creating an ordinance that is not consistent with the state law and is also potentially inconsistent with the Constitution. And both 77260 and 77590 prohibit city councils from doing that in third-class cities. Now, charter cities have some different, and I apologize, I can't tell you verbatim what the exact difference is, but I know some of the differences have to do with law enforcement and what they can and can't do and how they report to the city. And the charter cities have a little bit more, they don't have, I'll use the word strict scrutiny from these statutes that I think the third-class cities do. And so that is a distinction where he's using the he's saying these are the only illustrations I have, but they are charter cities, so therefore they're different. So he's just using it sort of as an opportunity to tell you that this is the only place it's happened, but it's not happened in another class city.
But what you're saying is we could repeal as an option with unintended consequences, but it is an option that could be under the table of what could we do.
Unintended consequences, but consequences that are foreseeable, that are in complete juxtaposition of everything you're wanting to do this for.
Except
so
that-
that's why the legal advice is that's not a good idea.
Well, I mean, the reason I wanted it and I think council was interested in having what we could do is to understand all that. I already asked Mr. Neckerman, at this moment, under the current law, someone could get sent to state, under a repeal, they could get sent to state. So it is technically still the same, in the sense of what could happen.
Never said it wasn't. That's why you wanted the information as to what his patterns have been as far as recommendations.
Sure.
Can I ask a question that relates to this? Mr. Neckerman, how many cases in the last, well, since you've been a municipal prosecutor, have you referred to the state?
You mean cases in general or marijuana cases?
Well, let's start with in general. Do you have any idea? Or do you keep track of that information?
I do. I would say between 50 and 75.
And how many cases do you think you've handled over the last, however many years you've been a prosecutor here?
Thousands.
Okay, and then marijuana specifically, how many first-time marijuana offenders have you referred to the state?
0.
Okay.
So, I've got a...
Jody?
I guess I just would also like to point out in the Kansas City instance here, something that seemed important to me was that before the Kansas City approved the making marijuana no longer a violation, they had also had a ballot measure where the citizens of Kansas City voted to decriminalize. And to me, I guess that's an important piece of this, is that they gave the citizens of the city an opportunity to weigh in before the council took action. And to me, that makes a difference in how we talk about this.
Good point, Jody.
Rachel?
Okay. Mr. Neckerman, you may not be able to kind of have all of these facts at your fingertips. But one of the things I was curious about when you're listing here the statistics for the different cases, can you give us sort of just your gut sense or your general sense of when you say, fine only, what kinds of fines are you talking about under municipal ordinance that generally are given?
Well, for a first offense marijuana, per the city's ordinance, a $100 fine is the maximum fine. That's the normal fine on a first.
You normally ask for $100?
Correct. For
Okay.
first offense, that's correct.
And that's the maximum now, too, if it's
That's
under
correct.
10, correct?
It's $100 plus there's $31.50 court costs. It's $131.
David?
Just one more, I just want to clarify on where I was going, just make sure I got the right things right. If, under the current ordinance, an officer can send to city or state, if it was repealed, an officer could decide to let you go on your way or send it to state. Is that correct? The ordinance was repealed?
I mean, the officer can. I think it'd probably be violating policy if they're ignoring state law violations. Sure, the officer does have discretion not to send charges to the state, sure.
Especially if the city had that guidance of a repealed ordinance, or?
I mean, they have discretion regardless, I think, yeah.
Thank you.
Matthew?
I was just curious, since we haven't really asked the chief yet, but chief, if the Rolla Police Department if there was an ordinance passed, like telling the Rolla Police Department not to pursue marijuana charges where there's little amounts like we're talking about here, what would you tell your officers?
My officers are going to enforce the law as they're sworn to do.
What does that mean?
They take an oath.
People probably still going to get arrested, and it's just going to go to state court.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Right?
Could I just piggyback on that and ask if that's true? If we remove the jail time as a penalty and the fines remain in place, would you still say that they would choose a court?
No, I mean, it's always our first choice to go to the municipal court.
Thank you.
The entire 6 months that I talked about in my talk, we've had 8 cases of marijuana possession that have gone to state court. But the only reason they want it is because they were arrested already on state charges, and you don't want to divide the cases. Those are the only times that we've taken a marijuana case to state court.
So I think if I can just summarize just for my own clarity, what I hear everyone saying is that if we remove jail time as a penalty, we're not making it easy on people who have an extensive criminal history or might have other charges for other substances like methamphetamines or heroin. If we remove jail time from our city ordinance for small amounts of marijuana, we truly are talking about the college kid that's got 2 joints in his pocket, and we're protecting small amounts in first offenses, but we're not causing any harm to those tools that need to be had for more difficult cases. Is that fair to say?
I think that's generally fair to say. The only caution I would say is that, like I said earlier, I think there has to be a deterrent effect. I don't think that deterrent effect has to include jail time, but I think some sort of a nominal fine of $10, $25 would not present a significant deterrent for people from violating the law. That's a city prosecutor. I could see the case numbers going up if that were to happen.
Lance, as a former prosecutor myself, I can say that, or don't you, I called you Lance, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm sorry. Anyway, I apologize. Called you the wrong name, Brad. There are situations where somebody has been arrested for some other reason, maybe a capious warrant, they have something else going on, they are arrested, they may spend a night in jail, they may be found in possession. They want the jail time credit for time served because they don't want to pay the fine. Isn't that correct?
Well, and I did raise that I think I raised that when I was here about a month ago. When someone's arrested, they fail to appear for court, or they're in jail on state charges. It is true that when our ordinance does not allow jail time as a possibility, the only option that the judge has to deal with those individuals is to fine them. So instead of giving them, for example, if they've been in jail 2 days on the warrant for failing to appear 2 days and not making a fine, they would have to pay a fine. So in those specific instances, not having the jail time as an option is something that does create more of a punishment for the offender than they would have if they could just get 2 days credit for time served and be on their way.
I mean, I'm not recommending one or the other, I'm just using.
I think I just have one last quick comment, which was, last meeting we did hear from someone who was a representative of the Missouri Defense Lawyers Association, Herman Gutersloh, and I understood that he had some more information to update on what he was investigating, which is exactly what we were talking about in terms of how do we make sure we're not making it worse. If our intention is to get rid of the jail time and not have these things sent to state court, what are some ways we can try to protect folks if we're doing that? And he had some more input. I was hoping to get him on to the agenda to speak a little more than the 3 minutes, because I think he'd have a little more to say about it. And I wasn't able to find the procedure in the way to do that, so I was going to address that more in council comments. But I just wanted to mention that I would appreciate if he would be able to come to speak before us, to kind of update us a little bit on what he, as the representative of the Missouri Defense Lawyers Association, and what he has found out, so that we can have, as part of the one recommendation, we can also have a little bit broader toolbox, just to at least explore what are all the options, and then we could choose between them.
David, we don't freelance our legal services. we have a very competent and experienced law firm who does municipal law. When they're presented with something that is perhaps outside their area of expertise, or the fact they want other opinions, they will talk to other lawyers. So the answer is not to bring Mr. Gutschlev in here and freelance legal services at your request. The way to do it is for counsel to make a request of our legal team and let them go get the answer, who may be from Mr. Gutschlev or maybe from somebody else. But this is not an open mic night here where we get every lawyer that wants to suit our opinions.
I understand.
We have lawyers, they act as experts, they act as gatekeepers.
Okay, and guess what I'm saying is I thought that we were going to get a number of options as opposed to one recommendation, and I'm just saying I know Mr. Gutschlev had an option that wasn't discussed here, and I'd like to hear about it. That's why I think it's important. If there's something out there that could differ from this and has another option there, I think it's only fair, once again, that we hear all the information that's possible. So I would like to discuss that in council comments as well.
Right after sanctuary cities. What else? Any other opinions? Carolyn?
No?
Nope? Okay.
I'll wait till the next set of questions.
So, does council want to take a next step on this particular ordinance? Do you want to have us come back with a proposed ordinance? Do you want to have the legal people talk to Mr. Gutschlev? What is it that the majority of the council wants?
I do not want to. I think we're
At
chasing.
the end of the day, on all these issues, I'm going to put everyone on the spot, and you're going to have to make a vote. So, give me some motions that you want to deal with.
Are you asking
Marie?
for opinions or?
Tell us what you want us to do as a next step.
John?
I move for Herman Gutschlev to be added to the next city council agenda so that he can speak on this issue and give us the information that Councilman Schott feels that we are missing and city residents also feel we're missing. Do I say so moved?
Dan,
Second.
Thank you.
why would we not want Mr. Gutschlev to speak to our attorneys, attorney to attorney, and let them put their heads together and get consensus? Because here's what I'm afraid of. He's going to get there, he's going to have his own opinion, and then we're going to sit and we're going to turn to Carolyn and Lance, and what if they disagree?
Then I would like for our attorneys to reach out to him, set up that meeting, and I would still like for him to come and give his spiel on it, and that's why I made that motion. Thank you.
Okay,
Second.
so there's a motion on the second to invite Mr. Gutschlev to do what?
To share with us the other research he's found on this topic.
Be more specific. I don't want to sit here for 3 hours.
To share his legal opinion from his research with this specific topic, not all the topics we talked about tonight.
What is
but
the
on this
specific topic?
Decriminalizing
One,
and/or
legal opinion on marijuana
deprioritizing. Thank you.
Decriminalization is not a valid term.
And/or
It was put on-
deprioritizing.
Because you people are using it. But decriminalization is not.
Deprioritizing then. Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to narrow this down. So is the intent of you two, before we vote on the motion, to address jail time and fines? Is that where you're trying to get to?
We're trying to address it all. What are our options? And does he have anything else to add to those options? So anything that he could put forward to us that we could make a decision with that is part of this topic.
Okay, there's a motion and second on the floor to invite Mr. Gutschlev to come to a city council and provide, I assume, some legal advice.
Could he be put in the special presentation so that he can go first?
Maybe.
Who gets to decide? I guess we'll talk
I
about
guess
it.
it's me. I guess
I don't
it's
know.
me.
I would like to find out about that.
So let's vote on that. Show of hands. Who votes for? 3, 4. I presume the rest are against? Okay.
Christine?
Oh, I'm sorry, Christine. No, I'm everybody accountable. Christine, how do you vote?
Against.
Okay. All right, so that topic is off. Question still stands. Do you want city staff to take a next step with respect to this topic?
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes.
while we've got Brad here, I'm trying to think about the punishments that we're talking about for marijuana possession. But Brad, could you talk about the punishments for like a minor in possession of alcohol? Because I think there's got to be some consistency in what we're exploring, and so how does that even weigh into an equation?
Minor in possession of alcohol is another offense that could be taken state court or city court. The range of punishment for a minor in possession of alcohol or supplying alcohol to a minor is up to 90 days in jail and up to a $500 fine in municipal court.
What would be typical? I mean, unfortunately, in a college town, we probably get MIPs. I understand what the maximum is, but do you have a sense as to what typically is the punishment for MIPs?
Typically, $300 fine is kind of normal. Occasionally, the judge will want a young offender to be on probation so that they are accountable and so that they don't repeat the same offense. So occasionally, the judge will impose probation on those cases.
Question still stands. Does council want us to do anything regarding this topic? Marie?
I would love to see us draft an ordinance to remove jail time from our possession ordinance.
I would like us to lower the fine amount as well.
Let's deal with one. Let's deal with them separately. Marie made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All those that agree with that, raise your hand, please.
What are we
Is this just removing jail time?
For us to prepare a ordinance which removes jail time, is there a quantity associated with that?
Sorry.
Or what's the,
Currently, the city, anything over 35 grams goes to state court. So
So 35 and under. Thank you.
okay.
So just a point of clarity, we're not voting to enact an ordinance, we're
Right.
voting to prepare an
Right,
ordinance.
exactly.
So this is not the final
Okay, so
decision.
all those that want to prepare an ordinance to address jail time, please raise your hand. Okay, so, second one. There's a motion made, is there a second to also revise? I'm sorry, Christine. Hold on. Christine, how did you vote on the last one? No, okay. Is there a motion to prepare an ordinance to reduce the fines?
Is there a specific fine amount where you reduce it to, just to clarify that?
From what I have heard from constituents, no more than $10.
$10?
I'm telling you what I've heard from constituents. You can decide from there. That's what I've heard from constituents. That's why we're making a revision here. It's at $100 right now, and that
How much
seems
is an ounce of pot, just
excessive.
curious? Chief? How much is an ounce of pot? No, I know the trick.
What do you buy it for, Chief?
Okay, so I guess $300, $400, whatever the number is a $50 or $100 fine that?
There you go.
That burdensome? Not everybody's taking it for medicine, do you?
I'm just telling you what I've heard from constituents. I'm not saying it has to be $10. I'm saying that we need to lower it from $100.
I heard you mention 10, but that's okay. Matthew?
Is there a way that we could be a little more creative? Because it sounds like a lot of the problems we have is we hear about this being a medicine and we're punishing those people that can't afford to get a medical marijuana card. Can we do something rather than a fine or jail time that if they come to court with a medical marijuana card, so they spend the $50 on that or whatever it costs, that...
And then their charges could be dismissed?
There you go.
Great.
Because, I mean, the problem is, if we lower the fine to $10, that's too cheap. People keep offending, as Mr. Neckerman pointed out. But what we're hearing, it seems to be, is that the people that are offending really just can't afford to get the medical marijuana card.
Or aren't allowed to actually get a card based on their work.
Well, then they probably shouldn't be smoking marijuana if that's the job.
So everybody's taking medicine, there's no substance abuse or anything else out there?
Well, I'm not suggesting that, Mayor, but what I am suggesting is if the council members here concern is that they're taking away the ability for people to use medicinal marijuana, then we should create an incentive for those people to get legal. And we're not doing that by just creating a low-level fine. They need to go to the doctor, they need to get legal, so that if we could create an incentive that would do that, as part of our punishment scheme, and I don't know, maybe it's not possible, but if something like that could be done, that would at least address those people that suffer from not being able to use medical marijuana.
That cannot be done? Or, I mean, we're presuming you know what the judge will decide, but...
Those things could be discretionary between your recommendations and what the judge approves. I mean, I certainly know there are certainly cases where we provide this, we'll dismiss the case, that kind of thing, but that's usually negotiations. I don't know about an ordinance because it steps outside the scope of what the state law is on that. That's the only, and I haven't researched it, obviously, but that's the only.
How about this, in the essence of time, picking up on Dean's point, is allow an ordinance to be prepared that will either lower monetary fine or incorporate some incentive or whatever that term's going to be. And we'll just have the next 2 weeks and let people figure it out and bring you back something.
Just one, are we talking one offense?
Anything under 35.
I'm sorry.
Anything under 35 grams, yes.
But multiple
Over and
offenses, then
over
the
again, or just
prosecutor-
one time?
Multiple offenses, the prosecutor would have the discretion if you wanted to send it somewhere else, as would law enforcement, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll bring that back. Next item, sanctuary city. David?
I think most of my comments under there was mostly about allowing Mr. Gudislow to speak, so I think we already made that decision.
So, wait a minute. When I asked you what he was going to talk about, you didn't seem to know much, but now he's going to talk about sanctuary
I
city?
think he did talk about that last meeting, and he was going to give updates to what he found
Okay,
out,
so
so now we get him.
let's talk about that, because I'm going to force you people to make a decision.
That's all we did.
Sanctuary cities are not legal. There's no legal term, as I understand sanctuary cities. It's a way to people to snub their nose at the law, who just don't want to like the laws that are confronting them.
Right.
Going down a path of sanctuary city
Right.
has got enormous legal implications for us.
Right.
It's going to take us a lot of time to present that.
Right.
It's certainly going to divide this community
Right.
every which way but Sunday.
Right.
So if you're asking to go down the path of sanctuary city, then I'm going to ask you all here and now to raise your hand if that's what you want us to do.
So I'm going to raise my hand to say that there was updates to that. I think Mr. Gudislow found out if that does or doesn't apply, and potential other options that now won't hear.
Is Mr. Gudislow or you heading down the path of a sanctuary city?
No.
Okay, so why did you make this the topic of discussion,
Well, I
sanctuary
think
city?
they were going to, Mr. Gudislow was going to update from last time what information he found out about that, and now we don't hear it. He had some other information after that he was going to
Okay,
also.
so when we put it on the agenda for Mr. Gudislow, we're going to say that this is about sanctuary city designations.
Update on his sanctuary to city discussion.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask the city council, for those of you that want that topic on the agenda, please raise your hand.
Thought we already went over this, but I guess.
No, you didn't.
I thought we already voted on that.
That is
I'm
what
asking very specifically, does this council want to put on the agenda Mr. Gudislow to talk about sanctuary city designations? Raise your hand if that's what you want.
I guess,
Yeah,
I guess.
all the information.
I can clarify
All
a
of
little
the
more. I was going to let
information.
him explain it, but there's a couple other topics that he's found out about sanctuary city and the ability to apply or not, which it sounds like it would be hard to apply here, and not.
I
like you
believe,
said,
I
very
believe
tough.
he was going to be speaking more about deprioritization rather than sanctuary city, though they do go together. He was going to give an update on why sanctuary city would not work and why deprioritizing, putting people through the criminal justice system for low-time marijuana offenses. That was my understanding of what would be happening. That's also what I was trying to get to earlier when we voted on it. But to Marie's point, yes, all of the information, all relevant information should be put to the public.
Okay, so for next agenda, we're going to have a sanctuary city discussion with Mr. Gudislow.
Okay, so you're
Okay.
putting that on there.
I thought we voted not to put that on the agenda.
They asked for a special presentation. I think Part of it had to do also where in the agenda.
I thought it was a note too, but that's what I'm getting confused here when you're saying Mr. Gutterschlow is going to come in and talk about something.
From what I understood, he wasn't allowed to come tonight because he was left off the agenda. Dave was put in his place. What we are after is
Just for the public's
for
He was on,
Just
I
on the
noticed it
public.
too. He was on the agenda, but I think he had a 3-minute speaking spot. I wasn't sure that he could
That-
do all the
that's what
information
I-
within 3 minutes, and that's why I was requesting he could have, because we clarified with the mayor, maximum 3 minutes, so, and I know that from before, so we would need a special spot for, if we want to hear from him, we'd need a special spot that we allow him 5 to 7 minutes, or a little more.
Okay, so the group previously voted to not bring him in to talk about this. Is that where we left it?
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Anything else on this subject? Moving up to citizen communications, open citizen communication. It's 10 o'clock, we have contract negotiations, so can I just see a show of hands?
Marie has something to add. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
So I just, if this is the council comment section, I had something
Go ahead.
wholly unrelated about a no parking zone that we got an email about the Forum roundabout. And I drove by there today, the roundabout that's over by the apartments and the movie theater and all of that, about the parking that is close to the corners, presenting, especially at night, a safety issue. And I drove by there today, and some of the paint is very faded, and there's a couple of spots in front of the houses where a car is parked, I mean, literally at the corner, and so oncoming traffic has to swerve out into the wrong lane to get around a parked car to enter the roundabout. And this email requested that we look at that because they've almost been hit there a number of times. They live in that area, so I was just wondering if we could address that.
John, you got that?
Yep, can do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other council comments?
Okay.
David?
This is our last, okay, comments. Okay, I just wanted to clarify with our city attorney what it does take to get something on the agenda. I just want to make sure I understand it better. In terms of which places that a council person could put something on, which places the mayor could put something on, and how it works to get something on the agenda if one of us does want to hear from.
Okay, I think I can answer that. I may not
Okay.
be what you want to hear, but I think I can answer the question. Basically, agendas or programs or orders of the day are what is developed from Robert's rules, which, as you all know, govern our meetings. And a lot of people are familiar with these. The rules are very, very old, but it's about decorum, it's about representation, it's about democracy. They're all about maintaining some order in order to have a meeting and conduct business. So there are some things that are done in, or can be done in Robert's rules to streamline or to make sure that people aren't stepping all over each other, talking all over each other, that kind of thing. The chair, as it's referred to in Robert's rules, which would be the mayor in this case, is the person who basically puts together the agenda and can decide if the council or the assembly, as it would be referred to in Robert's rules, feels that something needs to be discussed, there's a process by which to do that. The fact that notice has to go up, but, several days before our meeting, that determines what's on the agenda. That's why things can't be added at the last minute. The order in which things are going to be taken up is typically been done by tradition. I mean, a lot of organizations and corporations and entities follow a very similar method that is here in our agenda, which is like a calling to order, special information, the public hearings, then you have old business and new business, and then you have typically what are comments. Comments from council, so to speak, and comments from citizens are kind of, as the mayor had referred to, is a courtesy. It's something that's evolved in this agenda for this city. If somebody wants to change something on the agenda or propose that something be moved on the agenda, the only way to do it in on a one-on-one basis would be to ask the council to suspend the rules for some reason, is the way I've interpreted Robert's rules, which suspending the rules typically would require a 2/3 vote.
So to get something on the agenda.
But if there's a process, as Mr. Butts referred to in some of this communication, if the idea is to change the process or something, again, it's something that's brought to council to be discussed as a group. So my email today, when I was responding to everybody, wasn't to cut anyone off. It was, first of all, I do think sometimes in a large group email, conversations about questions or information can get very confusing and sometimes doesn't translate very well, first of all. Second of all, when one council person, as I think I've referred to and you and I have discussed before, when one council person says, hey, city attorney, answer these questions for me, we take our direction from the council as a whole or from a group and the mayor and Mr. Butts, who's the city administrator. So we don't necessarily, Mr. Crowell said, you know, I have a legal question, would you research for this for me? I would need to get sort of like a group consensus and the okay from the city and the mayor for me to go ahead and do that, because I don't work for the individuals or for one or two people's interests. We're hired to work for the city. The city is our client. And so each person's personal interests are not necessarily what we would go and do research. One of the reasons has to do with the fact that we are, by our contract, supposed to do so much work per week. And so for me to go do a research project to answer a question of one person may be something that not the group or a majority was interested in. And that, too, kind of comes from Robert's rules, is that we're pursuing the majority with an opportunity for a stronger minority. This is the phrase they use in there based on numbers, to be represented and have an opportunity to be heard as well. So there's nothing in Robert's rules that prohibits or stops you from getting something on the agenda, but it's each council person acting independently doesn't have the ability to demand something be on an agenda in a certain place. It's really up to the chair how the course of the meeting's going to go. If you want something on the agenda, there's a process by which you do it. Does that answer your question?
And the two questions. One is, so when you get legal questions from one of us, any one of us on the body, you like to send that out to everybody, is that correct?
No. I don't think.
I think if you have a legal question, it should go to City Hall. It should go to John Butts.
If I get asked to look at something, or Lance is asked to look at something because of a discussion at one of these meetings, typically we send that information to John to disseminate. That's typically what happens, instead of necessarily, sometimes there are group copies, but I know generally we answer the legal question, and then that information is incorporated in whatever other information John disseminates to everybody for the preparation of a meeting. But if I get asked a legal question by one person, I didn't know that your questions today would be something that one person wanted to know, two people wanted to know.
Right.
I mean.
So that goes the same if the mayor or John Butts asked a question, that would be the same thing that we would all get that answer to?
It depends on what it is. We answer to pretty much Mr. Butts and the mayor, and if the information is for the council, or the council as a group has a question, we'll answer that. Typically, we're trying to answer, it might be information, it might be procedure, maybe we're clarifying something that was brought up at one of the meetings. But since we're council for the entire city, it means we're directed by the entire council in order to do a research project. I'm not going to start doing research and billing the city for something that one or two or three people say they're interested in doing, unless I'm given that direction.
Okay.
By the city.
Let me add to that. So any one or two or even three council people do not speak for City Hall and does not speak for the whole body. So similarly, just because one or two want to put a subject matter on the agenda doesn't mean it's warranting the effort and expense. However, it's like I did tonight. If the majority of the body wants to put a topic on there, I'm fine with it. We don't need even 2/3 votes. But you have to act as a majority for us to make changes.
So just to clarify, she asked me if I understood. I'm not sure I do, but I just want to double check. We need a majority to get anything on the agenda, or we can ask that something be put on the agenda, but we don't get to choose where. Is that one or two of those?
If you want to suspend the rules, like to change your emails were about changing the agenda today. I think let me finish. There's a formal process by which you do that, and it's a point of order, and you suspend the rules, and it's complicated.
Right. No,
and that's where I say you need 2/3 vote.
That's if you haven't given public notice, is what you mean? I guess just clarify so you can answer the question. What I'm asking is, before the agenda gets put out, if I wanted to add something, not later.
Before the agenda gets put out, you want to put something out there. My understanding is that there should be a consensus known by the city, which the acting chair is your mayor, is going to approve if there is a consensus that this is wanted, that it's going to be on the agenda. Not just one person wants something on the agenda. If everybody here said, I would like this on the agenda because that's my personal agenda,
We're making this more complicated than it has to be. If you want something that you want the body or us to work on, David, then call City Hall and the section that deals with mayor council comments, just like you did tonight, and say, okay, I would like my 2 minutes or 3 minutes to talk about something, whatever it is. At which point, if the body feels that it is worth pursuing, I will ask the body to say, vote on it, do you want to take the next step? And then the body can decide. We need 2/3 of a majority, just a simple majority. But we're not going to put things on the agenda and go chasing rabbit holes just because one person or two persons want us to do that. There's a process.
Right, that's what I was just trying to understand the process, but it sounds like you need a majority vote to get something on the agenda, or the mayor's approval.
or you just need to ask.
It just need to ask. Pick up the phone and ask.
If the conversation is that there's a majority, once it's on the agenda, that there's a majority to further pursue it, then legal counsel may start researching that issue for you. I think we're talking about 2 or 3
So it
different
can
things.
be put on the agenda, but can't be further discussed until you get a majority vote.
I would say a consensus. There doesn't always have to be a vote. There has to be some sort of...
Introduce it on council, city council comments, so the whole body has an understanding what it is that you or anybody else wants to talk about. And then the body can decide, yes, we're all interested, or the majority of us are interested, and yes, we'll put the resources in. I don't know why it has to be more complicated than that. Deanne?
I understand that there is an MML training coming up for all of us on council, but I also understand that everybody here has gone through that training, but it seems like there's still a lot of misunderstandings on how things are run, so I would like to make a motion for Lance and/or Carolyn to get together, create and implement a local training on our Rolla parliamentary procedures, Robert's rules, and sunshine law, because it would be on a volunteer basis for us, but if the public could also come. That way we are educated as a city, and as it was mentioned earlier, protected as a council. And it would need to be virtual, so those who cannot join in person would have that option as well. So moved.
I would second that, to have that.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I could add?
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so we do a couple things. We do put out a elected officials manual. It's mirrored off of Missouri Municipal League's manual that's available. We're happy to distribute that. I thought we had already distributed that, but we can make sure.
I just got that last week, and I have the notes and presentations from last year's training.
Let him finish, and then I'll turn it over to you and you can respond. But John, finish what you were going to say.
Yeah, so it's a high level, very introductory. We do have the elected officials conference, actually starts tomorrow if anybody wants to do that virtually. But I'll tell you, there is no way to answer all of those questions. They're just too random and too diverse. A lot of the council members attended last year, the last 2 years, that session. They'll recall after sitting through each of those sessions for an hour, there'd be 10 or 15 questions where somebody would customize, and even then you can't begin to address them all. So nothing wrong with Lance or Carolyn putting together additional guidance, but some of it just takes time. It takes time and questions and experience and training, but there's no manual that's going to answer all these questions. They're just too specific to be able to address in that kind of a format.
Well, that's why I would like it to be specific to Rolla's parliamentary procedures. And I actually did take a look at that. I saw in section 2-8 of our city code that we run specifically using Robert's rules. That's why I'm asking that we have a local training on it. One, so that the public can be educated on it, because after every single one of these meetings, that's the most messages I get about. What happened? How did it happen? Well, how did that happen? I don't understand what happened. It's a lot of misunderstanding, and it does seem that there's a lot of misunderstanding on this council as well. And if we are not understanding it, I fully do not expect for the public to understand it. But I would like for us to reach an understanding together so that we as a city are well educated, and more importantly, again, I think protected as a council. We're bringing up sunshine law. I don't know enough about it. I do have a book on it. I have the binder I was just given last week. But I've now been sworn in since June and had zero training on any of this. That's not okay.
Yeah, so I'd encourage, again, I'd go to the MML virtual program, and again, no problem with legal trying to put something together, but even Robert's rules, which we're only doing by reference in our own code, it's hundreds of pages, and so there's just no way to answer all those questions. It just comes with time and experience and asking the questions. Carolyn, if there's a way that you can do it, God, all the power to you.
Right?
So if you would prefer not to try to put together a workshop, what is the procedure that you would like council people to use for asking these kinds of procedural questions? Is email the best format for that? How do we ask the questions and get the information that we don't know in order to be able to conduct business the way that we're supposed to do it?
My advice is pick up the phone and call.
Yeah, or put it in an email or ask it at the council meeting.
And you know, sometimes the answer might not be the answer you want, and you just have to live with that.
I don't think that's a problem. I think there is a lack of clarity. For instance, and the email, to your point, it was unclear as to what question was being asked, but it was a procedural question being asked in email. And sunshine law is invoked and said we need to discuss this at a meeting. And I understand exactly everything you explained why that was your answer. But is it email? Is it a phone call? Do we have to bring it up in a meeting? I'm just looking for clarity.
Yeah, I just want basics. I'm not asking for every little detail of Robert's rule. I'm asking for a basic education, like a 101 for the public and for city council members to come together and be educated together. Because the public needs to be able to come to these meetings and understand what's going on. I need to be able to sit here and understand what's going on. So does Dave, so does Ann, so does Marie. We need to understand what's going on in our emails too. I read through these threads and I am lost whenever we're being told, no, you can't talk about this. To Carolyn's point, thank you for explaining earlier, that did make more sense. But it shouldn't take this long. It's August, I've been on since June. These questions have come up repeatedly. We need answers, and I do think it would be helpful to have a local training by our people who are local leadership, and we're being told that those are the people we need to trust for all of our interactions. We can't invite any new lawyers to come speak. So I would like for these lawyers to be giving us training on this because they are experts, and we do need to listen to them, and I would like to be educated by them.
Excuse me. I would like to say something. I think that experience getting out there, going to the RC, the Rolla Regional Economic Development meetings, going over to center board meetings, going to a planning and zoning meeting, those things are where you learn who the people are that are asking you questions, wanting you to vote on this, that, or the other. It's through walking the walk, talking the talk with the people.
Everybody in the public has an option, though. I'm trying to give them an option to be educated on this, because I would also like to be educated on this.
It takes some time.
There's no replacing on-the-job training. And I will tell any new council person, it'll be a year before you even know what your chair is. And it takes a full term to really understand the basics of the job.
And I recognize that. I do fully realize I have a lot to learn. I would like for somebody to be teaching me along the way.
You have to learn as you go, Deanne, and you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to get burnt on some decisions, but that's how you learn.
Deanne, I'm no expert, but you're welcome to call me anytime.
Well, thank you.
Okay, moving, any other council comments?
There's
Yes.
a motion on the floor.
Oh.
On there.
Back on the motion to remove zero time from the ordinance. I didn't get to vote on that.
Because we did a hand.
And I
Yeah,
asked Christine.
It was just a request to bring back an ordinance. I don't think.
Yeah, but I think there was a vote. I think there was 4 of you that voted
It looked like 6.
6.
Actually, it was 1, 2, 3, 4.
The 6 that voted to have us prepare an ordinance.
And you
Just
voted. It was 7. Jody voted.
I think I raised my hand.
Well,
Terry, I think you voted.
We can leave our.
Yeah, sort of. Your hand kind of went up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
So changing the fine and jail time.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that.
No, the one,
That was the no jail time
I don't
one.
think we ever voted on the fine.
Yeah, you did.
We did?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Did you get that vote? I didn't think you voted either.
Right.
Okay, so do you want us to also bring back an ordinance that addresses the monetary penalty?
We talked about that with Matthew, saying that he wanted it to be able,
Or another option.
Right.
yeah.
I think
You did vote on
we
it.
voted on that. It passed as well, but I don't remember the vote.
Carol, did you get those?
It was to reduce the fine and/or other options for,
Okay, so show of hands.
Yeah.
How many people want us to do that too?
like a deferment.
Yeah, like a deferment, yeah.
Okay.
They both passed.
7? Lester, where are you at here?
She already got me, I think, but.
2, 4,
I think they
8?
both passed.
They've had,
Okay.
and with regards to the motion I just made, again, it would be on a volunteer basis only for council members and public, so just to make that clear.
David seconded her motion about doing a training, a local training on Robert's Rules and Procedure.
Voluntary for all.
Can we, before we incur cost, so the two that made the motion, could you allow us to come back in 2 weeks?
Yes.
And say,
Yeah.
instead of training for all of these things under the sun, here's our suggestion and prioritize it. What would benefit you the best, the fastest?
Yes, I would really appreciate that.
Okay, so let us do that.
And I would just specify, at least what my intention was like sunshine and the basics of Robert's rules.
Yes.
Okay. Citizen, any other council comments? It's 10 o'clock. We have a closed session. So, citizen communications. So I may have to adjust the time. So let me see a show of hands. Who would like to speak to city council tonight? Just 2 of you? I need a number. Three?
4, looks like 4.
4? Okay, so sequentially, let's do each one of you 3 minutes.
Could you, I'm just, the mayor mentioned this, could people let us know if there's, live in the city or county also?
Okay, wait a minute. Is this a group presentation? No. Okay, so why don't you each sit down and let one at a time come up and treat them individually?
She's actually the secretary for a nonprofit, so I will need her assistance for the slideshow, if you don't mind. This one? Okay.
Okay, can you state your name and address for the record, too?
My name is Shirley Martin. I'm not saying my address that loud. No problem.
Okay.
I'm here to remind you again that I am Shirley Martin, co-founder of Rolla Cannabis Action Network. And we had a few questions, so I wanted to address those. We are a nonprofit organization founded on love, centered around community. We're advocating for the citizens of Rolla, Missouri, as well as educating the public on numerous issues, including cannabis, through action, education, and compassion. Through these things, we are striving to equalize, normalize, and legalize cannabis use. And in this process of the last 2 weeks, we have also managed to sponsor 3 medical cards since it's illegal. Our intent is to change the way people look at cannabis and lingo surrounding it. We had one council member ask us to remove the word stoner from our initiative, and we decided that we're just going to take that word back because it's been used to belittle us and to show people that we are not what they assume, and proving that the words stoner and criminal are not synonymous. We're going to elaborate on some of the ways that you can use cannabis without smoking it, because everybody seems to think that this is just your extra token. So if you'll go to that.
You want to go ahead and address that last question?
And we're going to address what the other uses are from this plant, not just marijuana. Here you're going to see a suppository. This is used for cancer patients and people with severe eating disorders. This is not smoking cannabis. I'm sure you all know where a suppository goes. I don't need to explain that.
And that's the picture on the left.
On the left, yes. Next to that, in the little cans, you're going to see salves that can be used as topical. I can tell you from experience with someone that has immune disorders, I've had my skin break and blister.
Shirley, 1 minute.
Okay. And you can use that on your skin. I just want to go straight to the, we're running on time. So this is the endocannabinoid system, and the endocannabinoid system promotes homeostasis in every single living thing. Cannabinoids and endocannabinoids are found in various systems, allowing communication and coordination between your cells. It's quite literally the bridge between the body and the mind. In layman's terms, our bodies are built to consume, process, and benefit from these cannabinoids. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Endocannabinoids and cannabinoids.
Yes.
This next slide is just
Some other things that can be made out of hemp.
which is the
Plant.
stalk,
Yes.
sort of part of the cannabis plant.
And basically, some of you have been out with us as we're doing our Clean and Green Stoner
Shirley,
initiative.
that's 3 minutes. If you want to come back next week and give the other half of the
Here,
presentation,
I'll
that
let
would
you do
be
the other
fine.
half for your 3 minutes.
Is that
Minutes.
welcome? Okay, cool. Okay, so we have been going out, obviously, oh, Destiny Thompson? Do I have to provide my address? Yes, Destiny. D-E-S-T-I. Thompson. Is it required that I provide my address? Is it required that I provide my address?
What is the question?
Is it required that I provide my address?
Yes.
Okay. 2136? 2136? Timber, T-E-N-B-R-N-K.
You don't have to say it out loud if that's what your concern is, as
Oh,
long
it's-
as Carol has it for the public
I
record.
mean, if I gotta say, might as well say it. Anyway, we do cleanups, obviously. Clean and Green Stoner Initiative is what we call it. So our first one was at the Forum Manor Apartments. We chose this spot because we had received some information from somebody about the paraphernalia that was found. Here's some pictures from the last presentation. I think you guys all remember Holly. And here are some pictures from that cleanup. As you can see, there was a lot of garbage. I'm just going to go ahead and click through these for you. Just garbage, glass, stuff like that. This is more garbage. Our next one was at the Steeplechase Park. Once again, we received a tip from somebody in the community, said it was very, 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 very littered. So we went there as well. Here's some pictures from that. We were really, really happy to have been joined by 4 of our wonderful council members. You guys can see that on your screens. Here we have some police reports from the last cleanup, but since the last cleanup that we did. We have some here for controlled substances that are not marijuana, and then here we have some controlled substances that were marijuana, and we just would just like to bring that to the attention of you guys, just so you can see compared to each other, controlled versus marijuana. Our next cleanup we're
Excuse me,
doing.
I guess I'm missing a point. What is the point of showing who got caught doing what?
It's just to show you a comparison between the controlled substance and arrests and such done for marijuana.
Because during those 2 weeks, there was 10 more
Well, time out. This young lady's at the podium, so help me with the answer again.
It is to show you the comparison between the arrests, and obviously not all done between controlled substances, I can only fit 4 on the slide, and marijuana. That is from the Facebook page. I don't know where the police department Facebook page we got all that information from. It is merely a comparison. That is it.
Okay.
Just for informational purposes. Our next cleanup is at the Frisco train. Is going to be tomorrow, I believe tomorrow. No, yes? Wednesday at 6 p.m. Before the ribbon cutting on Thursday. We would like to invite all you guys to come out with us. It's a really good chance to get to know the people in your community. You get to talk to people from all walks of life. And once again, we are Rolla Can, and we really thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to come and speak in front of you, and we appreciate you.
I applaud you. That's a great community service that you're doing. Thank you.
Sure to get it off the screen.
Was there two more?
Hi, Jackie Childers. Childers. 206 East 18th Street. 206 18th Street. Apartment. Okay. Hi. I've lived in Rolla since 1977, so I've been around here as long, sometimes longer than some of you guys. I've watched it go from just a basic drinking town to I now have to make sure that my grandson has shoes on every time we walk anywhere in this town. I have found 4 hypodermic needles by the dumpster by my area alone. I would much rather be around somebody who is getting high off of marijuana or taking CBD oil than to see all the tweakers and all the other stuff that is going on in this town. I have watched personally family members struggle from this. I've also watched them get clean with the help of marijuana. There is nothing but nature in this. It's not man-made, it's not pharmaceutical. If it doesn't work for somebody, then don't do it. Nobody's forcing it down anybody's throat. But the opioid crisis has got to stop in this town. We are killing young people daily, weekly, hourly. Somewhere, somehow, all of us have to come together, and we have to figure out what we're going to do and stop labeling people that are smoking marijuana or doing CBD oil as bad people, because that's what they're doing. Maybe they're trying to keep from sticking a needle in their arm again. Maybe they're trying to stop from crushing the pill up their nose again. Maybe they're actually trying to get their lives back together. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Samara, S-A-M-A-R-A, Weber, disease, address 1045, County Road, 3110, Townhouse C. You're welcome. Hello, Council. I am setting a timer. So you guys started touching on something that I actually came here with the idea of presenting on the ordinance. It would be a way of literally not having to change anything else on the ordinance, and you would still be allowing police officers to do their job, which I want to make it clear, we in no way blame the police officers for anyone having to get arrested. They're just doing their job. My uncle was chief of police for 30 years in Pennsylvania, so we totally support the police. I want them to know that. So here's my idea, and maybe Kevin, you could look into this and like what the possibility of it is, and Mr. Crowell, I'm sorry. What would be the possibility of meeting a ticket, whether it be state or city, with a form of a deferred prosecution agreement? It would be a DPA. Basically, you would, the alleged perpetrator would allow for their name to be given to Rolla Cannabis Action Network. We would work towards the funding of their card. If they were to obtain their card within 60 days of the ticket being issued, no prosecution, ticket goes away. I understand what Mr. Neckerman said, and that's basic business law, what I learned. The whole point of consequences and of having the laws is to make sure people don't reoffend. We're not in any way saying go let people do something they're not supposed to be doing. We're saying that it costs $175 to get your initial card, and that only covers you for 1 year. We're saying that we can't afford that every single year in order to be legal to take our medicine. What we're offering to do, though, Rocan has actually managed to get 3 people sponsored within, about a week and a half to 2 weeks' time. If, in fact, only 2 people a month are impacted by this, we can get them covered, no problem. So the defendant would be willing to allow that name to be released to us, In exchange, we would work effortlessly, asking nothing in return from anyone. In fact, you would have less work because then you wouldn't, the prosecutors don't have to prosecute the case, nothing. So perhaps that's something that we could consider. It would be a way that in no way you're asking for someone not to do their job, the job that they've been sworn to do. You're making sure that the person does not re-offend. They've obtained their card now, they're legal. I think this might be a way that maybe everyone could win, and we would in fact be proving that we're not arguing for those who don't need to be taking this medicine, that they'd be allowed to take it. We're just saying, unfortunately, those who are in need of it, and this is truly medicine to them, they can't afford it, and they're being punished with the other group. And not a single one of them deserve that. So please consider something like that in exchange. I thank you very much for your time. 4 seconds to spare. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to the council? Okay, if not, closed session. We have one item tonight for closed session under contract negotiations. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote.
Lyons,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Boland,
Yes.
Schneider. Yes. Florence,
Yay.
Muse,
Yes.
Higgins,
Yes.
Everly,
Yes.
Crowell,
Yes.
Schott, Ruder,
Yes.
12A.
We had 2 votes, one on jail time, we had one on vote on the fine.